we'd greatly appreciate that.
I'll be glad to.
We'll get the flag up on the screen here and give it 1 second.
All right. Please join me in the salute to our flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
for all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Let's see. So Lynette, if you would could assist us in please calling the roll, greatly appreciated.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Just a few housekeeping reminders before we get started. To remind you that the meeting is being recorded. Members of the public who are participating telephonically can press *9 if they'd like to make a comment. Otherwise, they're welcome to send me an email at my email address located on the agenda, and I'm happy to read in any public comment. Board members, if you can please remember to mute your device if you're not speaking so that we don't receive any feedback. All right, Director Allard.
Here.
Cabalden. I'm sorry, was that you, Director Cabalden? Nope, I don't hear him. Absent. Douglas?
Present.
Flores?
Present.
Frost? Here. Gallardo?
Here.
Holmes for Gore?
Here.
Harris? I note that he's here. I'll note him for the record. Jankovitz?
Here.
Jennings?
Here.
Joyner?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
Kozlowski?
Here.
Leahy?
Here.
Lozano? I don't see him yet. I'll mark him absent. New?
Here.
Onderko?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
Sander?
Here.
Zaragoza?
Here.
Saylor? Chenier?
Sailor here.
Here, thank you. Chenier?
Here.
Slowey?
Here. Here.
Stokely? I see that he joined the meeting. I will mark him present. Stallard?
Here.
Soon?
Here.
Tixa?
Here.
Beerkamp?
Here.
West? Absent. Vice Chair Samayoa?
Here. Present.
Chair Frericks?
Here.
He's here. Ex officio member Tacker for Benny Paul?
Here.
And then I'll note for the record that Director Lozano is now in the meeting as well. Thank you.
And Harris as well, if you didn't catch that.
Yes, thank
And
you.
Lynette Spokley is here as well. I had some technical issues.
Thank you. I'll make sure you're in the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So before we move on to public comments, I just wanted to make a quick announcement regarding the membership of the nominating committee for the 2021 chair and vice chair. The following members have agreed to serve on this committee. So directors Gallardo, Underko, Sander, Saylor, and Beerkamp. And Director Stallard is going to serve as chair. So thank you all for volunteering to participate in the process. Appreciate that very much. And then you'll also be receiving an email notice soon from the committee chair or Lynette or both on how to submit nominations for the year ahead. Thanks so much for that. So now moving on to public communications. This is a time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Lynette, have we received any public comments via email, or is there a member of the public participating who wishes to comment?
I received no public comment.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Great. Well, we're going to then now adjourn as the SACOG Board of Directors and convene as the Airport Land Use Commission. Lynette, would you please note for the record any changes to the previous roll call?
There are no changes to the roll call. Thank you.
Lucas?
Yes.
Lucas?
Hi, Susie.
It's Susan Peters.
Yeah.
I need to recuse from this item to conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate
I'm
that.
going to stay on the line, but I won't be participating or voting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Peters. I'm actually going to go ahead and put you in a waiting room, and then I'll pull you back when we convene as a SACOG board meeting.
Okay.
Okay, confirming that she is now in a waiting room.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. So the airport land use commission agenda contains the following action item: the release of the draft Mather Airport land use compatibility update for plan for public review. So Greg Chu is going to present this item.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen right now.
Thank you.
Let me know when you can see it.
Okay. We see it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Greg Chu, I'm serving as the staff person for the Airport Land Use Commission, which is the SACOG board. With me today, in case there's questions, are Chris Jones, our consultant for the project, and Glenn Rickleton with the Sacramento County Department of Airports. So the SACOG board serves as the Airport Land Use Commission. Did that? The SACOG board serves as Airport Land Use Commission. Its purpose, we are assigned by the state to serve to make sure that the land use around airports are compatible with the function of the airports, mainly for safety issues. As the SACOG board serving as the commission, the role is to coordinate airport compatibility planning, adopt ALUCP, review land use plans near airports. And this is only for the 4 counties that are shown here on this. What we have today is we have a draft airport land use compatibility plan for Mather Airport. The board is being asked to release this for public review. So what's in the airport land use compatibility plan is basically to ensure that the future land uses are compatible with the airport. There's 4 major components that are listed here. Important to note that what the plan is it's not about airport operations, not about what goes on the airport property. It's about the land uses that surround the property to make sure all driven by state law, and SACOG and its counterparts around the state serve as the Airport Land Use Commission. As your staff, what we bring to you is various policies and draft plans to the board to review, and then we help by implementing ALUCPs, working with the local cities and counties, reviewing individual applications near airports to make sure they're consistent, issuing consistencies recommendation to the board, and coordinating with Caltrans staff. Caltrans oversees what we do as the airport. The local jurisdictions, what cities and counties are required to do is to update their land use plans consistent with these adopted airport land use compatibility plans. They work with the SACOG staff. They submit development applications if there's developments near the airport. But jurisdictions, local jurisdictions have the ability to override with the 2/3 approval of their governing bodies. Why are we bringing this particular airport plan to you? So the current plan that's in place was last adopted in 1997. These plans normally last about 20 years, so it's time for freshening up. In addition, the master plan for the airport, that's the part that does deal with operations and what goes on in the facility and so forth. That was updated by our partner agency, the operator of the airport. Operations have also changed over the years, different aircraft, different operations, so forth. And then there's also new development that's being planned for around the airports that we want to make sure that there's good coordination and consistency between those plans and the airport. And this was requested by the Sacramento County Department of Airports. They're again, the owner and operator. They're paying for staff time at SACOG as well as the consultant for this to happen. In the airport land use compatibility plan, there's general policies about roles and responsibilities. And then there's the major parts there's compatibility factors. And I'll talk about that in just a second. How does this look? Basically, we look at different factors. Safety and noise are by far the most important. And then we have these different layers. And once the layers are laid over one another, we identify the specific areas. So in noise, what we do is we look at the 20-year theoretic capacity. That's basically on what airport noise levels are and projected to be. There's the closer you are to the airport, the louder it's going to be. So we have different contours. And with each of those contours, we identify in columns the different level of noise and then different land uses for each row, whether they're compatible or not. So green in this case, compatible, and red would not. The plan is mainly composed of this. Same thing with safety. These are safety zones based on the statistical probability of where airplane crash is going to happen. If it is to the end of the runway, the more likely. So these zones are based on what Caltrans has provided as guidance to us. We follow that guidance very closely. That's the basis for the plan. So when it's all put together, we stitch that together and then we come up with where are the areas that are most affected. So the dark orange areas are particularly those that are affected by noise and safety. That's is a review area 1. The lighter orange areas are things that areas that might be affected level 2, and those already have existing navigation easements where if there is a real estate disclosure that there's an airport near. That's already in place now. So the plan is just continuing what's going on. So we've been developing this for the last 2 years. Been working with the affected jurisdictions and the planning staffs from that over the last 2 years. City of Rancho Cordova, Folsom, Sacramento County, both planning and parks. El Dorado counties had an interest in this. The Elk Grove Unified School District has potential schools to be built in this area. And we've been working with the other special districts that are affected by this within the airport area, and we've been working with the major development that are immediately affected by this. With that, we have the draft plan, and what we are requesting is for a chance to release it so that we can get comments and do further outreach to a broader array of parties. If that is approved and released, then we'll take a month to do that. We'll work on the environmental documents and the placement process through the rest of the year, and then come back to the Airport Land Use Commission in December. And then we would make any refinements, package it up as early as the spring. So with that, the staff is requesting that the board approve this. The airport, the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee. Chris and Glenn and I are available for questions.
Great, thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate that update in the report. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to comment on these items? Lynette?
I don't have any public comment.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve?
Stallard moved. We approve authorizing the release of the draft.
I'll
And
second.
Jennings will second.
I got several seconds, and the name I heard specifically was Rick Jennings. So we'll go with moved by Stallard, seconded by Jennings. Are there any additional questions, comments, or discussion on this item from any board member? Not seeing or hearing any. We will, Lynette, if you could please move to a roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Allard?
Ballard, aye.
Cabaldon, absent. Douglas,
Aye.
Flores,
Yes.
Frost,
Aye.
Dialdo,
Aye.
Holmes for Gore,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Jankovich, Director Jankovich, could you indicate your vote? I'll come back to him. Jennings?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'll note yes for that. Thank you. Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
Lozano, Director Lozano, if you could indicate your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. New,
Aye.
Onderrico,
Aye.
Peters is recused. Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Saylor,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Slowey,
Aye.
Foakley,
Yes.
Ballard,
Aye.
Thune,
Aye.
Texa,
Yes.
Beercamp,
Aye.
West absent. Vice Chair Samayoa,
Aye.
Chair Frericks.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. So we are now going to adjourn the Airport Land Use Commission or Committee, excuse me, Commission Board of Directors meeting and reconvene as the SACOG Board of Directors.
And Chair Frericks, if you could give us just one moment, we can pull Director Peters back into the meeting.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Confirming that Director Peters is back in the meeting.
Thanks very much, Renee. Appreciate it. So moving on now to the consent calendar. These items are intended to be approved in one motion. However, of course, anyone can remove an item for separate discussion. Is there a director that wishes to remove any item? Not seeing any. Lynette, is there anyone from the public who wishes to remove an item for public comment?
I have no public comment.
Okay, thank you.
This
so
is
then
Slowey. I'll move the item.
I'll second the motion, Flores.
Yes, we have Slowey, moved by Slowey, seconded by Flores. Any additional questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All right, we'll move to a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Director Allard,
Ballard, aye.
Cabaldon absent. Douglas, Director Douglas, could you indicate your vote? I'll come back to him. Flores,
Yes.
Frost,
Yes.
Dialdo,
Yes.
Holmes for Gore,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Jankovich,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
New,
Yes.
Onderrico,
Aye.
Peters,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Saylor,
Aye.
Chenier,
Probably. Aye.
Slowey,
Aye. Yeah,
Foakley,
probably.
Yes.
Ballard,
Aye.
Thune,
Aye.
Texa,
Yes.
Veerkamp, Director Veerkamp, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay, I'll come back to him. West absent. Vice Chair Samayoa,
Aye.
Chair Frericks.
Aye.
Coming back to Director Douglas, could you indicate your vote? I'll mark him absent.
Lynette, an aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. So now we've come to the action portion of the agenda. We're gonna just reorder the agenda item a bit and hear item 7 first, which is the 2020 funding round framework. As far as the order for the item to go, I'd like just to provide a little bit of a brief overview, sort of how I think we should proceed. So first, we'll hear a brief presentation from SACOG staff by Matt Carpenter and Garrett Ballard-Rosa. Then I just want to say we have, if we need her, we have Beth Osborne on the line from Transportation for America, Director of Transportation for America. Appreciate Beth being with us today. If there are additional questions or things that folks have for her, she's standing by for that. We're going to take public comments on the item as well. As folks know, there is also was an alternate proposal forwarded by some of the public works agencies within Sacramento County, and that is also an attachment to the agenda as well too. So if there is a public comment there, or that would be fine as well, of course. So first up, I just want to remind folks of where we are and what's happened obviously off the last meeting. So you'll recall that the item was before us last month, of course, and we had a series of votes, and we were not able to get to a successful outcome in terms of moving the staff recommendation forward. In the intervening time, there has been some work by some of the public work agencies in Sacramento County on an alternative proposal, which was submitted and is in the packets, of course. But also just would say as a quick reminder that the staff recommendation came out of the Transportation Committee with 9-0 votes and a couple of abstentions. So just want to now move, I think we're able to move to the SACOG staff presentation on this item. If there are no comments by any directors at this point. So, okay, so Matt or Garrett, are you ready to run through the highlights?
Yes, good morning, Chair Frericks and members of the board. I'm going to just make sure, sorry. Good morning. Thank you very much. As you offered some background on this item, as everyone heard, is a continued item from where we were at in August. And before we began, though, obviously we had some very good discussion among the committee and the committees in early August, as well as among the board. And before we begin, though, Garrett and I are going to just offer kind of a brief overview on the policy framework. And we just try to organize this a little bit differently in order to kind of emphasize some of the challenges and solutions that we believe are found in the staff recommendations. So you could advance the slide, please, Lynette. Great. Well, as you can see here, our overall kind of objectives for the funding round, they fall into 3 different topic areas. And these have been really durable kind of ways for us to organize both our work and outreach since the funding round work began early this year. Our overall objectives for the round include a broad range of outcomes, and we're just partially there. It's a long path, but it's an important one we're undertaking. And so we have a lot of work still to do. And what we believe is that an action by the board today on the policy framework, this would be just such a critical milestone for us to continue to do our next phases of work. A key next step would be to continue working with external stakeholders in order to finalize a budget that would be coming back for your consideration during the October board cycle. Okay, I just want to cover then some key challenges and identified solutions. And we're talking first on the investment priorities. Investment priorities, obviously, our focus here is on those changes in the 2020 funding round that make it a bit different from our prior funding rounds, that most recently the one in 2019. And among these, of course, is something we've had a great deal of board discussion on in recent months. And that's just how can we, with all the high demands out there, both for regional and local investments, how can we find that good balance? It allows us to continue making progress on what are some very big policy commitments and goals the board has, including the adoption and implementation of the MTP and making sure that we're making progress on a lot of things. So one of the key things here in terms of these regional commitments is just making sure that we can meet our federal and state performance objectives and goals. These include everything from something simple like road safety performance to making sure that reducing per capita greenhouse gas emissions can be advanced through our investments. We're also, of course, looking for ways for our region to make sure we're competitive for state and federal funds. And so there's a lot of emphasis in these policy recommendations to make sure that we can continue the good track record we've had with pursuing and being able to bring back to the region federal and state competitive grants. We also have a lot of objective of trying to make sure we can maintain kind of the excellence in our regional project delivery record. We really have established ourselves as a state leader, and we really hope that through this policy framework that these instruments and the flexibility that has long led to success can be continued so that we will be able to continue to bring back funds for the region. And then finally, there's obviously, as I mentioned with the MTP SES, there's a lot of policies and ambitious goals. They range from everything from fix it first kind of system maintenance needs to making sure that we're expanding travel options. And we really want to make sure that as you'll be hearing about later in the board meeting today with the board's working group on race, equity, and inclusion, there's a lot of important work that's happening now on the staff side, both to get smarter about how we can make impacts in disadvantaged communities and then match such communities to some of the investments that SACOG has influence over. So that's really our hope to make sure we can balance, making sure we're continuing making progress with all those ambitious regional policy goals and commitments. At the same time, and because there's so much demand in our region for these funds, we really believe that a kind of performance-based and competitive approach is the best way to make sure that we're putting investments on the most important and most impactful projects. While at the same time, we recognize one of the good things, lessons learned from this process has been realizing that there's a lot of interest out there from our stakeholders about ways to do the process a bit differently and making sure that we're very much connected to our local agency priorities and making sure that we can balance those regional objectives with some critical local agency needs, especially in this time of deep financial constraint. I'm going to then talk for a moment about, obviously one of the challenges we've got is trying to balance kind of, if you could go back a minute. Yeah, thank you. Just stay on this slide, please. So this is really the second kind of challenge we've really identified is that really it's that issue that we know that we've continued, our funding rounds have been very much focused on getting a lot of investments made for smaller projects just across the region. But what we really realized is that there's also the need to balance that with some opportunities for bigger funding awards. Typically 5 million has been kind of a threshold amount. But what that means is that typically the funding round has a lot of projects that are awarded funds for 5 million or less. And that's a really important because it allows us to offer a diverse number of projects across the region in urban, suburban, and rural areas. But we also recognize there are increasing needs to be able to provide more strategic, larger funding awards to move forward some of these projects that have more regional impact. And so we hope that what you'll hear in a moment about in terms of the structure for the funding round is that that's a real opportunity to balance those interests by making sure that there's still a category or path forward, a streamlined path to get those smaller projects funded, but also being able to fund bigger projects. And those basically are those two new categories. One of these project categories we're talking about is the transformative project category, which is really this idea of being able to really focus on strategic system expansion and management projects that have a lot of regional impact. Typically, these projects are larger, more expensive, and they take more time to implement. And what's really important about that is that we really want to make sure that we can, as I said, in the past, we've focused a lot more on small and medium-sized projects, but this will also allow for, by having these projects of more than 5 million, have a separate process that gives more time and attention, and we get the adequate documentation in order to make, we believe, like a good evaluation and recommendations that come back to you for your consideration. The other key category is our maintenance and modernization category, and these projects, these are projects that are like system, these are kind of the smaller projects that are typically system maintenance and modernization. These can be small projects, everything from improving a bike facility to making sure that we're getting money towards our local agencies to help on road rehabilitation or helping fund transit vehicle replacements. These are typical projects that are harder to measure their performance, but they're really critical investments for local agency needs. And what you'll be hearing about in a moment from Garrett is the consultation phase. It's really a great opportunity to be able to really understand what our local agency needs and make sure that those local needs are prioritized in our system to identify potential awards. Next, I just want to talk for a moment about our work with providing more benefits for disadvantaged communities. As you'll hear more when you talk about the charter later today, this is of course very important work where we've both been looking at ways to get smarter about understanding the disadvantaged communities in our region, as well as being able to kind of offer the foundation elements for a new pilot program that the funding round will allow, will support. This will be a great opportunity to put some real investments back into some of the communities, but it's really a bottoms up or grounds up process of working with our stakeholders in these communities to better understand their needs, and then being able to connect them to capital planning and program capital project grants so that they can build some key investments. So you'll be hearing more about that over the coming months. And then finally, just wanted to cover how important it is that we can make sure that we can do more with our funds. And this is really the idea of leveraging more federal, state, and private investments. A key challenge we've seen, of course, across the region is that our funding rounds are typically, we can only fund about 25% of the requests we get in terms of total investment needs. So this program is highly subscribed. So the best way we can have more impact is finding a way to do more with our dollars by working very smart with your staff and other stakeholders, as well as doing what we can to bring money back into the region. And so in order to do that, we have we'll continue, we propose in this framework, the flexibility and nimbleness that staying competitive allows us will help us continue some of the successful project delivery strategies that have really proven to be helpful in bringing money back into the region and getting grants. But we also want to start some new initiatives, and some of those are kind of part of the solutions provided, you see off on the right. One of these is kind of proposed starting a local match revolving fund. And what this will be, we'll be able to commit some funds towards local match needs on competitive federal and state grants. And we believe that will be very helpful for those agencies that are so strapped right now with their local dollars. They have these dollars to put strategically on a grant award, on a grant application, and should they get the money, it goes towards that grant and that project. Otherwise, the money comes back to the pot and it gets recycled for another agency that may be pursuing a different grant opportunity. We also recognize that in this time of really deep financial constraints, but also some really volatile kind of bid environment, that we've got a number of project sponsors that have come to us with some emerging budget gaps for numerous projects that did get SACOG funding in the past. But rather than have a project get stalled and not be able to implement in a timely way, this project program will be an opportunity to offer a strategic amount of money towards some of those investments, so that they can cover that budget gap and be able to get that project out for construction and obviously help the economy in the meantime. The other final element of this is just really finding ways to incentivize more agencies to plan and deliver projects for the future. A number of the policy framework elements really offer opportunities for sponsors to go further with their project development work, being able to get through more phases of environmental design right away and get ready for the construction phase. Some of those instruments that are in the framework include increasing the non-competitive funding awards from 100,000 to up to $500,000 for eligible planning studies and project development work. And also, there's also policy opportunities here by allowing a larger number of project development awards. So what we've also have in the framework are opportunities for a sponsor to maybe do more than just 2 phases of work. Maybe they get through 3 phases of project development, so they really can get more of their projects ready, shelf ready, basically for construction dollars that hopefully they could find from an outside source, from a state or federal grant, but even in many of those, they end up going to SACOG for both the project development phase and the construction phase. We really believe that some of the instruments and some of the fund options that we have in this policy framework would help them do that. So that's just kind of a brief overview on the kind of the investment priorities that are in the new framework. I'm going to turn it over to Garrett, who will offer some process ideas that we've developed that are including the staff recommendations for how we do the application process and the project selection process.
Great, thanks, Matt. And as I introduce the sort of process side, if you could advance the slide, please, Renee, just to reiterate how the investment priorities that Matt spoke to translates into the individual programs that we're speaking to in the staff recommendation. So as Matt mentioned, advance please, we are proposing for the large project-based program, the regional program, to be 2 program categories. Matt talked about this in his earlier slide, the transformative program category and the maintenance and modernization. Then the place-based complement, the community design program, the longstanding community design program, and then as Matt alluded to, the new planning and disadvantaged communities program. And then finally, those additional investment mechanisms to respond to some of the challenges that we'd heard. through our stakeholder engagement and our own internal review of the funding round. So that's just sort of bringing together how those ideas translate into the actual tangible programs of the round. Next slide, please. So just to close out this presentation, the organization of our ideas and our stakeholder engagement have been around the investment priorities and what changes we're making there and the complementary elements in the process itself. And so there's the application side of the process and the project selection side of the process. I'll start first on the application side. A key challenge we've heard from many stakeholders, and I think it's safe to say it's been a primary issue raised by many, is the desire for more certainty and predictability in the round. So the solution we've proposed in the staff recommendation is this advanced consultation phase, where SACOG would meet with project sponsors prior to the application. The sponsors would talk through their own local investment needs over the next several years. SACOG could provide some regional data and input, and then collectively we would talk through the performance benefits and competitiveness of those projects in relation to the program goals that the board adopts for the round.
Lucas,
and then as part of that advanced consultation phase, we would ask the sponsor to actually prioritize their own applications. We know that local priorities have been another key point of input we've received, and that this would be a key selection criteria in the round. The second element we've identified within the application process is how can we lessen the...
Garrett, hold on just one sec. Actually, Director Chenier, is that you were trying to get my attention? Or Garrett, I apologize, Garrett.
Sorry, very quickly, Garrett, as you're walking through these things, I think it would be really helpful to kind of identify how it differs from the current process. So we know what the change is, not just this is new, but what are we doing today? And then how will this change? If you could kind of give those examples along the way.
Of course, and just to make sure I understand your question, Director Chenier, you're asking for how the staff recommendation today differs from the prior cycles of the round?
Correct, from current practice.
Okay, great. So the advanced consultation that I just alluded to is a new element that we're proposing to introduce in this round, as well as the the sponsors ranking their own. So both of those in the first row of that table are new elements. The second row of the table about resources. This is an element we've been hearing for several years from sponsors, and we've also been thinking critically about that. So I think we have a record in the 2018 and 2019 round of thinking about streamlining. So this is the elements that we speak to in the staff report are sort of an addition. It's not necessarily a new thing. It's not like we've just started thinking about streamlining right now, but we think we've been able to continue the elements we've been incorporating over the last several cycles. For example, program consolidation, incorporating new ideas of work priorities within existing programs instead of creating a new program. And then what we're continuing is our work on trying to streamline and shorten the application. So to emphasize, the first set of ideas I spoke to are very much new ideas for the 2020 round. The second bucket around streamlining are trying to continue the good work we've been doing collectively over the last several cycles. Next part of the table, please. And then finally, a key issue we've heard in the challenges section is the challenges and complexity of a project that is phased or segmented over multiple cycles. So then our solutions on the right-hand side of the table, which are new in the staff recommendation, a change to our practice. We're recommending in the staff recommendation that the board removes its prior program emphasis on small and medium-sized awards. This is an emphasis the board has had over several cycles. Is there a question? And so we're recommending the board removes that emphasis on small and medium-sized awards. This would allow for larger awards within the round. We're also introducing, which is new to 2020, the opportunity for a limited number of projects to get multi-cycle policy commitments. What that means is a project would receive awards in this round and in the subsequent funding round. And then the third element is an area I spoke to above. It's not necessarily a new idea, but again, as we streamline the program, that makes it easier for projects to reapply. So the new ideas we're talking about, the advanced consultation phase, the sponsors ranking their own priorities, which becomes a selection criteria, and then there's the ability for larger awards within the single round, and then potentially a limited number that can span multiple rounds within the application process. Next slide, please, Renee. So then finally, the third element, how we organize our ideas, are the project selection and evaluation. If the theme or catchword of that second element, the application, was predictability and streamlining, what we're trying to hit on here is transparency. And so sponsors have raised the desire to participate in project evaluation. So what we're proposing, the staff recommendation, which is new, is for the regional program, the largest program, to offer the opportunity for project sponsors to serve on the evaluation committees. But we have a longstanding conflict of interest requirement that we've built out through several cycles. So the opportunity to serve on the evaluation committees while preserving our conflict of interest. Second component, please, Renee. And then to ensure that the project needs are well understood by the evaluators. Again, the consultation and interview stage I already spoke to. And then finally, to complement that, to make sure it's a holistic review, there's the performance outcomes element of an application. We, through the last 2 cycles, have developed a data component side. So this is not new, it's just an expanded element of, we know, going back to the resource question we talked about earlier, just the time and effort it takes to apply to a competitive cycle, a lot of that comes down to data. So we've offered to have this data tool that we ourselves would run. So again, a continuation of elements we've incorporated earlier. What's new is we're offering to actually run that data component for the project sponsor, and then to expand the delivery review, which is conducted by engineers. So again, we've had a delivery review in the past, but it's to expand it. So this third category is a collection of sort of new ideas and sort of expanding on some elements that we think has worked well in the past several cycles. And thanks, Renee. Just the final slide, please. So yeah, just a short presentation, given that you have not heard the staff recommendation for a month. To close out, the work is really a culmination of many months of engagement. We recognize the slide on the screen is a lot of words, but maybe that's the point. We tried to summarize all the work we've been doing collectively. This is not just the work that Matt and myself and SACOG team have been putting in, but a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders and sponsors have put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into this. And we very much appreciate the comments that we've received and the engagement we've been able to conduct. We've thought very critically and spent a considerable amount of time thinking through those comments we received and how they relate to the regional policy commitments that this board has made through several cycles. So what we do believe we've done in this staff recommendation for the framework is to move forward the round, which maintains its competitive nature, but also incorporates new elements that have been identified through this collective engagement to streamline the process, to allow for greater certainty, and then to respond to the board's evolving policy and investment needs. So we do recommend that the board adopts this recommendation this morning. I'll pause now, and of course, all of us are available for any questions, but Chair Frericks, I'll turn it back to you to continue the board deliberation on this item.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, yes, Director, hold on just one moment. I've got, so thank you very much, Matt and Garrett. Appreciate the presentation from staff. I've got a number of hands that have popped up, but Director Saylor was up first and Director Ndurko, they were the first 2. And then I've got Joyner and Slowey and Director Peters. Go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to move approval of the recommended action as described on number 2 in our staff report for item 7 here. So I move approval of the staff package.
I'll second that motion, Director Flores.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So we have a motion for the staff proposal and recommendation by Director Saylor and seconded by Director Flores. I'm going to go now, though, to there may be questions, of course, on this item. So Director Ndurko.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Matt, Garrett, thanks for your hard work on this. I know it's a lot that goes into this over the year. Can you, Matt, please elaborate on the specifics of providing more benefits for disadvantaged communities? What specifically in this plan does that?
Yes, thank you for your question, Director Ndurko. So specifically in this framework, we have a new program that we're starting that's a pipelines project. And what that does is it's a $3 million commitment that you'll hear about during the budget item next month. But what the idea there is it's a bottoms-up planning effort that we first engage with a number of disadvantaged communities across the region. And that through that kind of planning process, we better understand where folks are at, what would be ideas that would be investments in their communities. Because these dollars are transportation sourced, they need to be kind of thinking ahead towards probably transportation related investments. But that could range from anything from improving the bus frequency to that community, as well as a capital project. We've had good success in the past trying to partner with our local agency sponsors on everything from improving a bus stop to also helping improve like bike opportunities. A lot of the Civic Lab innovative mobility work is around micromobility. And sometimes folks like in a lot of our disadvantaged communities, they actually use biking and walking to get to work at higher rates than other communities. So making sure you're closing a sidewalk gap, making sure you're offering a micromobility option like a bike share, or just sometimes just as simple as bike racks. Those are all critical investments we believe will be identified from that. But what we really are hoping is from the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group for the board has got is kind of to really be clear and thoughtful about how that outreach is meaningful and how we're active listening, not trying to prescribe solutions, because that's been something we've seen in the past that doesn't always work. So there's going to be a lot of planning at the front end of that process, but that $3 million will ultimately still go to a number of capital pilot projects that may be may be identified after a year or more of planning discussions. That's on one track. Parallel to that is going to be a lot of work we're doing just to get smarter about analyzing needs in our region, kind of an assessment where we're at. As you know, we really like to be kind of evidence-based, in our performance-based planning efforts will include new analytical tools that we're trying to bring into both this funding round, as well as other planning efforts we're doing as we think about the next long-range plan to get smarter about needs in communities. And so things like I mentioned a moment ago about how in some of our communities, there's much higher share of walking and biking to get to schools, get to jobs, get to destinations. We have some new tools related to accessibility that we could describe in more detail, but those accessibility tools make sure we're really understanding where people are starting and where they're going, and better understanding where we can match that to transportation investments. So parallel to getting the framework adopted, you'll hear more about in the coming months for this pipelines project, this new $3 million grant program, will be that ongoing work behind the scenes of SACOG staff trying to get smarter about data and then analysis tools that we will use to get, we hope, smarter about needs in such communities, as well as just how we can then connect that to prioritizing investments we make.
Thank you, Matt. And one follow-up to that, Chair, and then I'll be done. What's the current definition of disadvantaged communities as SACOG sees it these days? Can you define that, please?
Well, we have a few different definitions we use. We have an environmental justice definition we used in the MTP, which looks at both race and income level thresholds. I don't have the particular stats right in front of me, but we can certainly get that to you, or if there's anybody from SACOG staff that remembers the exact cited data thresholds for race and income. But they are also, remember, a lot of our planning efforts, what we're trying to do is break out of the box also of just trying to meet those federal or state requirements. I mean, if you talk about disadvantaged communities at the state level, you'll hear sometimes frustration that there's everything from an enviroscreen mapping to other different ways. And so there are a lot of different metrics that are used for defining different disadvantaged communities in our region, as well as our state and country. But we're trying to get smarter about beyond what we have to report on through our MTP, and to get really more thoughtful about working with communities and really listening to how they define their geographies or define their needs.
Okay, thank you, Chair Fredericks.
Well, we'll certainly get back to you with that data specifics about the definitions we
Please do. Please follow up. Thank you, Matt.
Great, thanks very much, Tim. Appreciate that. Director Joyner, Slowey, Frost, and Kennedy are up next.
Thank you, Lucas. I just really, more of a comment than anything else. I just wanted to point out that in our past discussions, from time to time, the way Placer County handles its funding rounds has come up. So I just really wanted to point out that these advanced consultations are a key element of what we do at PCTPA. So it's good to see that folded into the recommendation.
Thank you.
That's it.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, I also want to be clear, I have not forgotten Director Peters, so as well. So if let's just do Slowey, and then I'll have Director Peters go.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank staff, Matt, Garrett, James, for all the work that's gone on behind the scenes. I mean, I feel slightly guilty here since I brought this up in March, and it's taken a lot of time, quite frankly, more time than I thought it would. You know, my goal was never to say we were going to be all end all, start with a recommendation for formulaic and end on that. You know, I wanted to see discussion. I wanted to see some improvement based on feedback to the process. And quite frankly, I think we got that. If I go back to the last meeting where we brought this up, you know, it was 24-4, pretty overwhelmingly, you know, people wanted to move it forward. I get the whole two-tier voting, et cetera. And I also realize, you know, that we have Director Frost, Peters, and Kennedy here who are going to make an alternative motion. But at the end of the day, I think we all know it's not going to pass as much as I'd like to see it. I am concerned that, what happened in 30 days suddenly spurned on to come up with a proposal, and in conversations I've had with many outside of this on, particularly feedback on the federal side, there's some issues on a formulaic plan, and I don't think that those have been fully vetted out to do that. So once we go through the process we're about to go through, I hope we all step back and say, as a region, we need to show some uniformity, pass the staff motion and move it forward. But in the back of our mind, keep it, that we continue this discussion each time the funding round come up to see if we can make it better. So with that, I'll yield my time. But again, please, let's end this today and be adults and say, we did our best, and we've got a better process and move it forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Director Slowy. Appreciate that. So Director Peters, and then Frost, Kennedy, and Cabalden.
Susan, if you're there, you're on mute.
How about now? Am I muted?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank
Loud
you.
and clear.
Sorry. Okay. Just to take some of the suspense out of what we're going to be talking about, I want to state that there will be no alternate proposal presentation. The rebuttal was received too late to analyze. The alternate proposal was an attempt for jurisdictions to have control of a small part of the budget to meet expectations of their boards and councils. And there was a lot, maybe thousands of hours of hard work by many DOT staff. But I think it's clear that we need more conversation. And at this time, I feel there's not a will of the board to move ahead with this pilot program. So again, we will have no presentation, and there will be no motion on the alternate proposal, at least from Sacramento County. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Director Peters. Directors Frost, Kennedy, and Cabalden are up next. Go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Director Frericks. I just wanted to thank the board members for giving us a little bit of extra time to have this conversation and possibly discuss some alternatives. I'm just tagging on to what Director Peters just said. But I do want to personally thank the public works staff who have worked so hard to help us identify some possible funding, ways to reduce our funding uncertainties and gain better leverage over our local funding priorities. And, there were so many of us that really felt that what the public works staff had identified as an alternative what could be done. It's being done in many other jurisdictions nationally, but it's clear that it's not the will of this board at this time. And I am also going to support the funding round. I want to thank the SACOG staff for making the adjustments to the funding round, for listening. I know, some of these conversations can be hard, but without these conversations, we don't have better outcomes. So I do agree with Jeff Slowy that we do have some improved outcomes on this funding round for streamlining and getting better certainty and hopefully a better outlook for those of us that were having those concerns. And so I want to thank the SACOG staff for that. And I look forward to watching this as this funding round unfolds. And so those are my comments. I want to thank everyone for being willing to have the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Director Frost. Appreciate that. Director Kennedy, followed by Cabalden, Chenier, and Lozano.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm probably going to say more right now than I've said in my 5 years on the board. So for those of you not used to hearing my voice, this is Director Kennedy. I'm actually glad that we took this extra time. It gave me an opportunity to talk with not only staff from CARB, staff from SACOG, our own staff from even the Bay Area, and to really, dive into this. Is very difficult. I've been very concerned, as I've said, on how much funding Sacramento County gets for critical projects, and I'm particularly sensitive to the needs of my board members on the county board who represent a greater area of the unincorporated area than I do, who their roads are completely dependent upon county funding. And so this does not come easy. But I've also looked at the concern that the feds won't allow a population-based formula to distribute funds, as we've seen in the Bay Area, where their plan has been ruled non-compliant, and I don't want to put us in that position. I'm also concerned with the fact that we're barely meeting our 19% greenhouse gas target, and in order to do that, and to be eligible for millions of dollars in competitive SB1 transportation grants, grants that RT and the county have significantly benefited from, and are counting on this year, with RT looking at $120 million in SB1 grant awards that they're seeking already. But we can't meet those greenhouse gas targets without a significant investment in regional transit. And that's just a fact. And if we go to a formula based, I'm afraid that RT will be left out, and that will be bad for the entire region, not just for the area that is served by RT. It's been said that Sacramento County is not getting their fair share. I think that there's some truth to that. Now, the reasons vary widely, but when we originally started talking about this, we were told that we were getting $3.8 million instead of the $30 million we might get through formulaic funding. But when I dive deeper into it, I found that actually we got $9 million out of the $15 million that we requested in 2019, $22 million out of the $51 million we requested in 2018. And also when you take into account the regional transit money that has been awarded, as well as the Caltrans dollars, and the Caltrans dollars, I will say, have significantly benefited the residents of the district that I represent. So for a number of reasons, should this formula be adopted, I do want to make a plea, though, that we do better in communication between the county staff and SACOG staff, and that we make sure that our county investment priorities are understood. I don't think that's always happened in the past. I also want to make a specific plea that, in the future, when an agency on the board brings forward a proposal, that it be vetted more openly than this has. I don't believe that the county proposal got its fair hearing, and I hope that in the future when we go forward that we'll be sensitive to that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Kennedy. Really appreciate all your comments. I wish you would, I hope you consider speaking up more often because what you've said was all very good. Appreciate that. Directors Cabaldon, Chenier, and Lozano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to also thank our colleagues throughout the region. This has been a challenging, hard work, bloody fight around all these issues. And from my perspective, that's not a bad thing. It's a reminder that what we do here at SACOG matters. It matters a great deal. It matters to our individual jurisdictions, and it matters to our collective sense and aspiration to do right by our people as they move from place to place, as they breathe a common set of air. And what came out of this process was, in some sense, reigniting for many of us that sense of commitment and collaboration. And we fight like a family at Thanksgiving because we matter to each other, because we do live together. And we exit this, if this is adopted today, we will know, each of us as board members will be better at our jobs. I've chaired this transportation committee like 100 times over the last 20 years. I know a lot more about the funding round and about about the objectives and how to ask the right questions as a board member, how to compete as a local jurisdiction, all of that than I did at the outset. And I think we're all better as a result of that process. So although I've been on the opposite side of Sacramento County on a lot of these issues, I do want to thank them and Director Slowey and others who brought this forward and said, we have to talk about this. These issues matter and they're important. And let's roll up our sleeves and get down to it, and then hopefully get to a point like appears that we are getting today. This is the most sweeping reform of the funding round process that we've undertaken in more than a decade. I think Matt's presentation reinforced that. The 75 pages that we get every month on this item has reinforced that as well. But just the sheer breadth of changes that are being made as a result of this process are astounding, and there should be something that we should be proud of as a board, that we took a hard look internally, that our staff feels that they have the degrees of freedom and the support from the board to be creative, to think about things differently, to listen and to work with others. So I think this represents that good work. I also want to thank our colleagues in Placer and El Dorado who have been very, very helpful in helping our 4 counties to see the big picture, to think it through, to sometimes egg us on, sometimes to pull us back, but this is our regional structure is complicated and nuanced, and the entire delegation from Placer and El Dorado, whatever the votes were and whatever the discussion has been, I think has been a really powerful force in helping us to resolve this within our region as well. And then to thank GSEC and the Metro Chamber and the dozens and dozens and dozens of other stakeholder groups who also, I think many of them rediscovered why SACOG matters and why this is important for air quality and climate and all the things that we've been working on, but also economic development and prosperity and the other issues that we're trying to drive forward together as a region. So I just want to, again, thank the board for its leadership as well as our staff, and look forward to supporting the motion.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Director Kowalden. I have Director Chenier and Lozano.
Thank you, Chair. Always hard to follow Christopher on this. And I want to be brief because I do agree with everything that's been said. I really wanted to show my appreciation for Susan and Peters and Sue Frost and Jeff Slowey and others. This was a conversation that many of us put a lot of time and effort into. And as Sue Frost said, we have a better product. And I think we have a better product for the entire region. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about a number of the pieces of the puzzle that staff have brought forward, particularly around the disadvantaged communities and the planning money that will go into those communities so we can increase the bench of proposals that we get over time. That's the only way that this is going to happen, and we're going to achieve some of those regional goals. I also very much hope, and I'll be talking to, I'm sure Rick and I will be talking to our own staffs about the consultative process and really making sure that we take advantage of what SACOG has to offer throughout this process, because I think we can all be more successful if we do that. So a large thank you to Garrett and Matt for kind of putting up with us through this whole thing. But again, I do think that without the beginning of this back in March, without Jeff and others saying this is something we need to look at, we'd be where we were, which was a good process, but I think we're much better off. I think this has evolved and will continue to. And I'm certainly, for one, committed to continuing the conversation. We can always get better. And as long as we remember that and work together to do that, I think we represent our jurisdictions well. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Director Chenier. Appreciate that. Directors Lozano and Assoon, please.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I don't say a lot either, Director Kennedy, but I appreciate those that brought this forward. I truly believe at the end of the day, we do have a much better product that's going to serve the entire region and certainly our individual communities. And so I wanted just to publicly thank the public works directors that worked so hard over the last year or so, raising the questions, and then also certainly SACOG staff and the amount of time and energy and phone calls from James and things like that that happened. Really appreciate the feedback and input and what you guys do. And then lastly, just the rest of the board. I do believe that debate from time to time, no matter the outcome, really does open eyes to not only the process, but certainly the fact that SACOG does matter. And I think Director Cabaldon said it best as it relates to that. We do have a lot to offer here, and I certainly appreciate everyone's input and drive, whether you we're speaking about it in a board meeting or talking to each other and staff behind the scenes. I think it really made a difference. So thank you all very much, and that's about all I have. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Director Lozano. Director Sun.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to also just add my own personal support for all the things that have been said about regionalism, about continuous improvement, and about commending the SACOG staff for hearing the concerns from certain members of this board and trying to take that to heart and improve the process. Me personally, my concern was about priorities from individual stakeholders when they go through this, and I felt SACOG staff did take that to heart and try to make amends, improve the process accordingly. And so again, I would concur with what was been said by others. We've got a much better process going forward, and I'm glad to see all of us moving forward together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's the last hand that I have raised. Are there any other directors that want to offer up any comments or questions or anything right now? Otherwise, I want to make sure that we have not had an opportunity for public comment, additional public comment on this item yet. So any other last directors here? Not seeing any. So Lynette, are there any additional public comments on this item or public comments at all?
I have no public comment.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I'll just, spend just a few seconds here. Of course, my sincere gratitude to the members of the board for all the work that's gone into this year, but particularly also, certainly a sincere amount of gratitude and thanks to Garrett and Matt for their work on this and SACOG staff at large. Appreciate all of the effort and dedication that's gone into this. I do think that it is a vastly improved funding round. I think the amount of changes that are going to be taking place, we will have an opportunity to also measure that. And I think as a organization, we're always consistently looking at how we can improve upon all of the things that we take under our charge. So thank you all for the work on this. And I do, one thing I try to be pretty, I hope I'm fair, and I try to be pretty, inclusive and make sure that all points of view are able to be heard, and really try. That's just something that's important to me. And I certainly have spent a lot of time, when the board leadership has spent a lot of time on this over the course of this year, and it's time worth spending. But I'm excited that we have the opportunity to move forward, particularly because our communities are hurting. There is a need to get these resources out the door so we can actually get projects underway and continue to work on rebuilding our communities from the economic downturn due to the pandemic. So with that, if there are no other further questions or comments, we will call for a vote. We have a motion by Saylor and a second by Flores. Lynette, if you could please call the roll.
Thank you. Director Allard?
Allard, aye.
Cabaldon?
Aye.
Douglas?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Yes.
Chair Farrick?
Aye.
Frost?
Yes.
Gallardo?
Aye.
Holmes for Gore?
Aye.
Jankovich?
Yes.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
Anderko,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Samayoa,
Yes.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Slowey,
Aye.
Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Soon,
Aye.
Tiksa,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
and West absent. Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you
Lynette,
all.
Lynette,
Go ahead.
Lynette, I don't know. I know I don't talk too much, but forgot me. I'm a yes on that too.
Sure the record reflects that.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Director Harris.
I'll talk more from now on.
Thank you, everyone, for that process, and appreciate that item is moving forward. So now we'll move on to the next item, which is going to be the adoption of the Race Equity Inclusion Charge Working Group Charge and Meetings report out. Jennifer Hargrove is going to present on the item, of course, but as a reminder, this item was on the agenda for last month's board meeting. We just didn't have a chance to get to it. And after Jennifer makes her report to us, I have a couple comments, and Ricky may as well too. So before we move on, get moving on it. Thanks, Jennifer. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. The primary purpose of this item today is to request that the board adopt the charter for the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. Before we get into that, I did want to just make touch on a couple other points that are in the staff report. First is that SACOG went through an RFP process over the summer and have hired a consultant to help us with this work. The selected consultant is the McKinsey Mack Group. Their scope and the process that they are recommending for us to begin with a racial equity audit. This is a process in which the consultant will be reviewing our agency's goals and policies and work plans, and they'll be conducting informational interviews with some staff, some external stakeholders, and hopefully with many of you as well. I believe many of you, if not all of you, have been contacted or in the process of being contacted about your interest in participating in these interviews. The work that McKinsey Mack is doing with this racial equity audit will help inform the key next steps for integrating equity, better integrating equity into our work. The board working group will be playing a critical role in using the outcomes from the McKinsey Mack work to inform priorities and help us develop a clear path forward for the work ahead. The second thing I want to highlight from the staff report is that the working group has met 3 times. So attachment A offers agendas and brief meeting notes from those meetings. I won't recap too much from those notes, but 2 of the meetings the group did discuss the funding round framework that you just acted on. And I do think it's important to note that the working group was generally very supportive of the ways that that framework does try to integrate equity, notably that it's a program goal, and then the new disadvantaged communities pipeline program that you heard Matt mention. So turning now for the specific action requested before you today, which is the charge for the working group. So attachment B includes the draft charge for the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. As a newly formed working group, the charge is intended to be flexible and broad, but still provide a sense of the types of topics that the working group could discuss. Some of the topics you'll see in the charge are around building and analyzing data, understanding and supporting local agency efforts, building a shared understanding, and just overall building race, equity, and inclusion into our work in a more intentional way. The working group and the board, of course, have the ability and the authority to edit or amend the charge at any time. There was a good discussion about the charge at the working group, and with a few modifications made to the charge, they did ultimately act to recommend that the board adopt the charge. And with that, I will turn it back to the chair for any comments as well, if you want to expand upon the discussion that happened at the working group. And I'll stick around if there's any questions for me later as well. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. Appreciate that. So just a few things. I think, as a little bit of a recap as well, based additionally to the presentation by Jennifer, there was been good discussions at the working group at meetings about the charge. And, I think many of the board members have stressed the importance of not getting ahead of ourselves and presuming what the outcomes of the work will be. I think that's was a real key takeaway. And I think for me, because we're all coming at this from different experiences and places, there's a lot of discussion and acknowledgement around needing to start with building a shared understanding and to be, of course, and also to be thoughtful, but not moving too fast or shortcutting this work. So it was a really good discussion about wanting to talk about all the inequities and not just racial inequities. I think finally, there's also the desire to be flexible and potentially change the charter in the future, potentially after the work with the consultant team is over in the coming months. So, I think ultimately the group did feel it was important to adopt the charter and bring it to the full board for consideration. And hopefully we can get an approval today. And I would just offer the co-chair an opportunity to make any comments before we take any other questions or comments from members of the board as well. I don't know, Ricky, if you have anything you wanted to add in.
No, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope if there's any questions, then we can answer them today about the charge itself.
Great, appreciate that. Thanks. I have, let's see, before we have any other, I have one hand raised so far. Just quick question to Lynette. Is anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? Lynette?
I have no public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Director Anderko?
Thank you, Chair Frericks. I do have a question of the working group. Have we come up with, has the group come up with a definition for equity? I mean, I hear equity used quite often. It's a very loosely used term. Equity of what? Can anyone from the working group define how equity is being defined? Equity of what?
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that. Anybody care to take that on first as part of the working group at all? Or if you, I'm happy to sort of take a shot at it, but I also think if any commentary from staff as well, either, that'd be fine.
I think if staff can just kind of provide on that definition that you presented it, there was a presentation in one of our group meetings that talked about equity. So I'm hoping maybe Jennifer can kind of review some of those thoughts that were shared with us during the committee.
Yeah, definitely. I am trying to quickly find that. We did at, I believe it was the first or second meeting, provide, I think it was with the charter. We provided some definitions. I don't know that it was, decided that this was the definition that the working group would run with, but we did provide a set of definitions, and equity was one of them. I am having a hard time finding it. So I don't know. If you give me just a second, I can try to find that. Or maybe if Monica's listening to me, she can send it to me really quickly.
I'm going to put you on the spot there.
Yeah, sorry to put you on.
I think you guys did a good job.
I'm listening and I'm tracking it down. Thanks, Monica.
Yeah, what I would say is, I'll just say, so first of all, I'd just say that we've had several meetings. One of the presentations focused on sort of issues around equity. I don't know that there was an explicit single definition that was offered. I think the issue is that in part, we've been, that was part of that's really part of what, for the question that was asked earlier, you asked a question in the last item about disadvantaged communities and sort of the definition that's being used. And, there are several, there's, official definitions from the state. There's a variety of definitions that are out there. So I personally think that there are, I don't recall if there was an explicit single definition that we used. I mean, it's in that presentation, but I know staff is looking for the, sort of what was part of the presentation. Yes, go ahead.
And Director Underko, if I can, and I think this is an excellent question, and I want to say just for the board, I think part of the reason we're trying to be thoughtful about this, even the definition to respond to your question, Director Underko, is precisely because, as many of you have said, we're trying to approach this work with humility that we don't have the answers. And we're also, by our consultants' very strong advice, really trying to slow down and be very intentional. And so just back to some of my comments early on and at the working group, and as you and I have talked about, what I would say in particular, as I have been here for 3 years in the region, I go back to the Brookings report. I go back to the disparities that our region faces, and those disparities by race and income in particular. And what can we do as a region? What can we do as local government? What can we do as SACOG to be intentional around narrowing those disparities and making sure that we use the tools we have and the skill sets and our core capacities to be intentional about trying to address some of those disparities. That's at least what I would offer up for now, but I do think we are being advised very strongly to sort of be intentional and slow this down. We'd be happy to obviously come back with you in terms of definitions and everything else, but the spirit of this, I think, is really important.
Okay, well, I asked because it's obviously something that we see in the title of this action item, and it's turned into be somewhat of a buzzword. I think a lot of people have a different idea of what equity is, and I guess I'm honing in on, are we trying to pursue equity of opportunity or equity of outcome? And I want to be supportive of this if we are going to be pursuing an end product that looks like equity of opportunity. I think we need to expand opportunities for all folks, and the way we do that is oftentimes through building economy. But I don't think that turning this into a discussion and an objective of equity of outcome is something that SACOG got to get involved with. That's my 2 cents, Chair Fredericks. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your hard work, for all the folks who have volunteered, by the way, to be on this committee. I plan to follow the progress that you guys make, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. So I have Director Saylor, Soon, and Cabaldon.
My comments will be brief, Mr. Chairman. I want to just touch on the question that Director Underko has brought up and refer to the scope, the purpose statement, and the list of activities. The second bullet is building data to analyze racial disparities in economic outcomes and access to economic opportunities, mobility and transportation equity, and create a baseline of indicators to monitor equity metrics. So I think the idea there is that this is an ongoing process. It's a work in progress, and the discernment on what equity means in our work together is a part of the activity that the working group has outlined for us to pursue. So I think the question is, the reason you're having some trouble getting an explicit, direct, specific answer to the question is that we intend to examine just that question, and I'm really excited about the process before us. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you. So Director Soon, Cabaldon, and Joyner.
Thank you, Chair Farks. I had to sign off early in the meeting that this committee was created, so I just wanted to request the opportunity to join the committee, and then wanted to address Director Ndurko's comment as well. And equity, you know, when we talk about equity of opportunity, it needs to be done in a way that where you have a disadvantaged community, if you both, somebody who's not from a disadvantaged community, somebody who's from a disadvantaged community, if they try to have the same apply for whatever it is, a job or, you know, college or whatever, it's not on equal footing. There's a great graphic that I saw where if you have three people looking over the fence and you have a tall person, medium person, and a short person, in order for them to all look over the fence, the shortest person needs the biggest box to stand upon. And so that's, in my opinion, that's what I would offer the committee, you know, to chime in, is that when you have folks who are in the disadvantaged position, they need a little bit extra help to give that, you know, same, you know, equity and opportunity. And that's, to me, that's what we're striving for in the prosperity mission. You know, that's what we're looking to achieve. I don't think it's equal outcomes per se, but we want to make sure people who are in a disadvantaged situation, they can get a leg up in the sense that they can have a fighting chance, like someone who may not be from a disadvantaged situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It is I've seen that graphic many times, and it's an important one. Director Cabaldon and then Director Joyner.
Yeah, I think actually Jennifer included that graphic in one of the working group reports as well. Look, this is going to be hard. It's just we're not building out the definition of vehicle miles traveled at this stage. It's not that equivalent yet. At some point, it has to be, though, right? That we're also not producing a manifesto, and this reminds me a lot of when we first started working on sustainable development, 15 years ago or what have you. And we, okay, we're going to work on sustainability. Well, what the heck does that mean? Sustainability, and we, in some sense, we never really defined it. We allowed, Heather Fargo and Ton Saylor to go off and say sustainable development meant that we were going to, end cars and there would be no more emissions ever, and that everybody would be eating food grown in their gardens. And at the same time, we allowed, Bill Hughes and Citrus Ice to say it means we're finally going to get that sidewalk widened, right? It's just we didn't have to all agree on that. And so focusing on trying to reach agreement on kind of at the big concepts as opposed to like what we do. The magic of how SACOG became the country's leading MPO at the time on sustainable development and emissions and everything else was that magic. We recognize that our region is diverse, we have different points of view, and that we're still learning. That even those of us that had strong opinions didn't really know what sustainability really meant on the ground. And I think that's, for me, it's a useful frame for how we entered this conversation. I don't expect we're going to get to a universal, five sentence paragraph that defines equity, permanently and perfectly. But we will need to get to an equity definition or set of them that are the equivalent of vehicle miles traveled or the equivalent of, some air indicator or something, because that's what we do. Right? We use metrics and data in order to influence policy. So we will have to define things in a very refined way. And sometimes that can be best advanced by not obsessing about or focusing on trying to force people into a sort of a political high-level policy agreement prematurely. So I think the question's right, Director Ndurko. But I would be, for me, I'd be hesitant about trying to answer it at the outset, because it feels like that's just going to invite us to disagree about stuff way up here. And if we leave it open enough through the process of the working group, that we will find ways, one, that everybody can buy in ways that make sense for them locally, but also ways that can be actionable, because we can translate them into funding criteria or into performance metrics and other things that will be meaningful for the work that we're advancing.
Thank you, Director Cabaldon. Director Joyner, and then I'll ask the co-chair, Samayoa, to wrap things up.
Thank you, Lucas. So I somewhat share Director Onderko's concerns here. I don't know how we within the committee have a conversation without a shared understanding and a shared language of what we're talking about. I get Christopher's high level magic, but this is a really serious conversation to have. And if we are missing each other, each of us believing the other has our definition, we could miss the mark. And so I just want to the degree we can, find a way to refine these titles, these brands that we've come up with. Social justice is one of them, and that's so broad for most of us and others that I think we need some refinement in this and a common understanding as we move forward. That's it.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Director Joyner. Vice Chair Samayo, do you want to?
Well, thank you. Chair, I'm excited about this work because for a number of reasons, just because we are a diverse region, rural, urban, suburban, we have communities have lack infrastructure. We have some that have a unique set of assets. And I think the work that we're doing is going to be very reflective. And I think the definition portion is going to be a big thing. And that's why we want to do this audit and bring these folks to kind of help us through that process of creating these definitions for our region, because it is so diverse. I always, at the end of the day, what our work should be is to use our resources to make it the most impact that we can for our region, for jobs, for housing, for transportation, and basically for economic development, and create a more competitive region so we can have more folks come in here and invest their private dollars in our region. And I think that's in my mind what this will add. It will add at the end result a more impactful set of investments, public investments that we're going to make, because the hope is that we'll be able to find projects that our current systems weren't able to identify. And I hope through this process, we'll be able to identify some other projects that maybe didn't have a chance or weren't even found before through our previous process. And then the pipeline of those projects will allow some of these projects that never made it, had a chance to get through. And hopefully at the end result is that we have a greater impact when we sum up whatever variables we're using, whether it's air quality or job creations or economic output. Really, in my mind, this is what this is going to help us. This is part of our process, in my mind, to make it a more impactful region, that we can bring in more investment for us, so we can identify projects that can be maybe couldn't even be identified before because of the work and the planning process that we want to put it, the pipeline that's going to allow some projects that maybe in the past wouldn't have happened. And when we measure this 10 years from now, we'll be able to look back and say, I'm glad we were able to be part of this and move this forward. So I'm looking forward to this project. I'm looking forward to gaining some steam on this and really having these, direct conversations that we're having today, because that's going to make it even better. So thank you, Chair, for bringing this up. And I look forward to working this, in the near future and see what we come out with the audit.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. I've got two more directors in the queue, Director Gallardo and Director Tixa, and then we're going to try and get to a motion and a vote. Director Gallardo.
You just wanted to do a little input about something from my work world and that really applied for me on defining what our disadvantaged community was. In my school bus world, we put bus stops based on very specific guidelines, and we've had them for a zillion years. Is there a crosswalk? Is there a controlled intersection? Is there a light? Is there a stop sign? Is there a sidewalk or a shoulder? Are they within 2 miles? Then they're walking, because that's a safe place for them to walk. And we've had those for years and years and years. And then a couple years ago, some students from Florin High School came to us and said, it's not safe for us to walk to school. And I went through my checklist. Well, sure it is. These are the same guidelines we've always had and they work. But then they explained to me, we're crossing at Stockton Boulevard and Florin Road. And there are some outside influences and safety challenges that are not physical related to the streets. And I had to take a step back and say, I get it. I wouldn't want to walk at that spot at a certain hour of the day because there are some safety concerns. How in the world do I define those? And how do I make that specific so that everybody knows when we look to where we're going to put a stop, this is how that applies. So that's kind of what I think we're doing with this. This is going to be a living document. I expect it will change as we go, but really take a step back like I had to do and look at something from a different lens. And so I'm going to work hard to make that happen. And I hopefully that helps Director Ndurko with the approach, because I think we have it defined in our minds, but maybe we need to take a little broader look.
Thank you very much, Director Galdo. Appreciate your comments. And Director Tixa.
Thank you. I just want to add that going back to the Brookings Institute and the data that they showed about disadvantaged communities and of course this board's been trying for years. I imagine we're finding a solution to this issue, and I personally believe this is one of them that will help out, as well as something with the Youth Leadership Academy that we added on as a board, because I can at least say in my generation, this is just like with everybody's generation, this issue is going to follow us. And you guys have been mentioning about the future. And this right here, is what we're creating as a board is going to help that. It's going to set, a discussion, hopefully guidelines that for the future SACOG board members that they can continue. And again, it shows the youth, it shows disadvantaged community, it shows everybody that the goals are trying to meet and future development. And again, I really am great. It's fantastic that we have something like this and this is organization, and we just build on it, because again, it just shows everybody that we want to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments very much. So no other hands are raised. I don't know if there's anybody else out there with any additional final questions, comments at all. Otherwise, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the working group charge and move forward.
I'll move.
Oh, sorry.
Mike Saragosa.
Saragosa moves. Do we have a second?
Chenier.
Okay, we got multiple seconds. I've got Shanira first, though, as I heard, but Jennings and others. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing and or seeing no hands raised, we will go to a roll call vote, please. Lynette.
Thank you. Director Allard? Okay. He may have dropped off the call. I'll come back to him. Cabaldon?
Aye.
Douglas?
Aye.
Flores?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
Gallardo?
Yes.
Holmes for Gore?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Jankovitz?
Yes.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
Lozano?
Aye.
New?
Yes.
Onderko?
Aye.
Peters? Dr. Peters, could you indicate your vote? Okay, I'll come back to her. Sander?
Aye.
Zaragoza?
Aye.
Thaler?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Slowey?
Aye.
Spokley,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Soon,
Aye.
Pizza,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
West absent Vice Chair Samayoa,
Aye.
Chair Frericks,
Aye.
and Director Allard, are you there? Not seeing him. And Director Peters? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So now we're just going to move along. We've come to the information portion of the agenda. Item 8 is the Youth Leadership Academy Year 3 outreach. Monica Hernandez is going to present this item for Rosie Ramos, and then we're almost done here, folks. Just probably another few minutes after that. So Monica, good to see you this morning.
Nice to see you also. Good morning, board members. I'm excited to share that we are actively recruiting for our 2021 Youth Leadership Academy. And I'm here essentially to just run through the timeline very quickly, but to specifically asking for your support locally in outreach. Staff has prepared a digital toolkit for all of your youth, as well as the youth for any other community-based organizations. On our digital outreach toolkit, we have sample newsletter language, social media content, we have images and information. If you need something specific, myself or Rosie are happy to help with you. As a reminder, Youth Leadership Academy is free to high schoolers, grades 9 through 12, public school, private school, charter, or homeschool. This is a free program through the generous support of many, many donors. And Director Chenier has been a critical partner in helping SACOG and our partner on this program, Pro Youth and Families, do the solicitations for ongoing sponsorship. And our applications are open now. It's a 100% online application. It's fairly brief, open through October 23rd. And I'm happy to pause there and answer any questions in respect of your time.
Thank you, Monica, for that presentation update. Appreciate that. Are there any directors that have any questions or comments at all for Director Ndurko? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Monica. Thank you for thank you, Chair. Thank you for putting this together, Monica. How many openings do we have this year?
We've had a variation. So our goal is to have approximately 60 applicants, recognizing that when we go through our interview process and we describe the program, some students decide that it's not necessarily the right fit for them. So we have capacity probably for about 50 students.
And I'm sorry if this is in the staff report. What is the deadline to file a request?
Applications are due October 23rd.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your ongoing support. I know we've had lots of representation from Loomis area.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And then let's see, any other directors with questions or comments at all?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Will this toolkit be distributed in how is it going to be distributed to us? Will you be sending an email out, or what's the?
So in the follow-up communication that you received from Lynette, she'll include the link in there, and then the toolkit everything is available on the website. So you'll be able to download the sample newsletter, the images, and again, if you need anything customized or you're interested in having Rosie, myself, or potentially if we can secure one of our youth alumni to speak at with a local group, we'd be happy to do that.
Well, thank you, because when I read through the material, it said something would come later. So you're telling me that that's going to come later.
Yes. At the time we wrote the staff item, we were not finished with the toolkit, so it is ready to go now.
All right. Thanks.
And I failed to mention that SACOG staff and Pro Youth and Families are also doing outreach directly. We're specifically targeting Title I schools. So those are schools that are predominantly free and reduced lunch. However, we really rely on your local staff for support to get into communities and neighborhoods. So anytime you can contribute is greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Director Chenier for his leadership in creating this and supporting it.
Thanks all.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other directors with questions or comments at all for Monica? Otherwise, thank you, Monica, for that update. Appreciate it. And we will all work on getting the word out to the schools and such. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move along now. I'm going to bypass chair's report. I hope everyone's doing well. That's my report. Board member reports. Anybody with an update? Director Teeksa, go right ahead.
Yes, I want to mention this because I really want to thank Sutter County and the city of Rockland for distributing some Rural 20 credits to the city of Live Oak because we finished our undergrounding along the highway. It was a long process, some challenges with PG&E, but we got it done, and the highway itself is moving forward. The first section of the highway on the south end of town is nearly complete. Caltrans is going section by section. It's going to take, should be done by fall 21, but it's looking great so far. I've heard some positive responses, which is great. But again, it's still going to be a long process. But again, I appreciate the support from the county and the city, Rockland, Sutter County, and SACOG. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other directors with any other items to report? Not seeing any hands raised and such. So I'll move along now. James, if you want to just give us your executive director's report, and then we can get ready for move to adjournment.
Thank you, Chair Frericks. Just a few things, many of which were highlighted in my written update in the board packet this month. It is the beginning of a process of local nominations of green zones. That item was robustly discussed and debated at the Lunar Committee. As Chair Spokley and many others know, it was approved by the full board in August, and that will be before all of you in the next few months. We can get back to you with more details. I think all of your staff knows about this, but it really is, again, our way to get a very bottom-up strategic plan around infill development, commercial corridors, and everything else that will be ours and uniquely ours as a region. So we're very excited about that. And also just, we've had some tremendously hopeful conversations with many of our public agency partners around those green zones, including folks like Regional SAN and Regional Water Authority and SMUD and others to try to, and under Director Sanders' leadership on the Commercial Corridor Task Force, trying to figure out how can we actually partner to provide a lot more incentive. So a lot more to come on that, but I do want to just flag and make sure you all have not forgotten about green zones. Month of October is a big month. Some of you referenced this in the funding round comments. We have our Sustainable Communities Strategy, 19% achieving the target in front of the Air Resources Board right now. We're very hopeful that will be approved in the month of October because that is the critical next milestone to be able to be eligible for the SB1 competitive grants at the state level. And we are also very hopeful about those, one of which, of course, is the Placer Gateway plan, which again is a great regional project that includes I-80, I-5, but also Metro Air Park, Elkhorn Boulevard. So we are hopeful that we'll do well on that, but we're looking for in the month of October to get a final approval, fingers crossed, from the Air Resources Board. In your packet, and just in terms of other deadlines coming up right next week, is actually our telework initiative that Monica and Bruce and Adrian and many other folks on your staff have been working on very hard. I know you've had updates on this. Sometimes they've been a bit squeezed, but we do think it's very exciting. September 22nd, it's in my executive director's update. It's actually on the front page of the SACOG website. If you have companies that you think would be a great match for this pilot program, they get technical assistance. It's basically companies that have actually been doing remote work, and we want to try to figure out how to intentionally work with them so they can keep some of that remote work and telework actually as a transportation demand management strategy going forward. And the last thing I'll just mention, which you know, and Chair Frericks will have more to say in the coming months on the mega region work that we're doing with MTC in the Bay Area and San Joaquin County. I participated in a Tahoe Mobility Forum last week, which was, I have to say, very eye-opening. They, and I know many of you know the basin very well. Director Veerkamp talks about this all the time. But I would say one theme that really emerged, and you know, they've got the extra added challenge, if you think our region is complex, of another state, state of Nevada, and congressional and gubernatorial appointments to agencies that cover the basin. But what I heard loud and clear in the Tahoe Basin in that forum was we can't just kind of do all the same old solutions and think people are just kind of going to get out of their cars. And we have to think big. We have to think bold. Congestion pricing was mentioned, a fee to get into the basin, all the very things that I think came up in our last MTP-SES. Lots of concerns on the equity impacts of those, on workers that have to come into the basin because they can't afford to live there. Those are very real concerns, but it was an excellent conversation, frankly, interestingly driven by a lot of the private sector and developers who really feel like, especially with remote work and the rush on real estate in the Tahoe Basin, that it's getting to the crisis in the basin. And of course, our overlap there with PCTPA is critical. So more to come on that. I was happy and delighted to be invited to that. That rounds out my report. Back to you, Chair Frericks.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. So just wanted to also, Director Saragosa has one additional update he wanted to provide as well too.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick update, and I forgot to mention this earlier. Highway 50 on the Echo Summit project will have full closures on Highway 50 starting tomorrow through October the 2nd. So if you're planning on going up to Tahoe, please look for alternate routes because that will be closed. And I know when we do full closures, sometimes we'll speed up the timeline a little bit. But for now, the Highway 50 will be closed at Echo Summit between the 18th and October the 2nd.
Great.
Thank you.
Much appreciate that. Just in closing, if there are no other sort of announcements from any other directors and such, just in closing, just want to specifically, maybe if we can adjourn the meeting today in memory and honor, actually, one of our directors, Director Flores, his father just passed away recently. And so I'm sure many of you saw that Director Flores' dad passed away, but just wanted to acknowledge that, and very sorry to hear that. And we send of course, our deepest sympathies to you, Dan, and your family at this time. And with that, we would stand adjourned until the next board meeting will be Thursday, October 15th. Thanks so much, everyone. Stay well, stay healthy, and look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, Lucas.
All right. Thank you all.
Lucas. Thank you, everyone.
Lucas, thanks everybody. Take care. Bye.